Hello. This dog is being a wicked dick. And he's pissing me off right now. Get. And I'm not sure why he decides to do this every time I film. It's like I say hi and he's like, oh, let me go fuck with her. Just keep your mouth shut. Okay. Hello, my friends. I look a little bit like a hot mess because I had my hair just like natural and down, and then I was like, I don't feel like doing it for a video, so I should just like at least put it up half up. And then by the time I have my makeup on, I'll look sane, right? At least that's what we're hoping. Also, this is one of my favorite shirts. I like don't really wear it that much, but it's like one of my favorites. Because it has little faces all over it. Look at it. It has faces on it. Anyways, hello. How are you? I hope your Friday has been amazing. Mine? I bet it was great. I'm filming this a week ahead of time, but I bet it was great. Today, we're going to embark on our books and beauty journey, okay? I'm trying to come up with some sort of series that I can do on this channel where I can do something that maybe I can get a wider audience, you know, simply because I feel like just makeup videos is great for my 134 of you lovely humans, but books are also great. So I like books and I like makeup. So I figured, can we combine them and discuss my books that I read? Essentially, I was sitting here and I was like, what's something that I enjoy that I can turn into like some sort of series on my channel that also has to do with makeup? Because I don't want to just like completely go out in left field. So I decided I read a lot and I've been really enjoying reading. I've been purchasing books like crazy. I've been reading books like crazy. And so I figured, why wouldn't I combine them? So I decided to start this series called Books and Beauty, where I will review a book that I've read for the month, a book I read that month, or whatever books I read that month. It'll be a once a month kind of thing, and we will discuss those books in particular. I also have decided, until I get caught up to that, like whatever books I read that month, I have a lot of books that I've already read in the last year or so that I would like to discuss as well, because at the end of the day, I can't go without talking about them because they're great, okay? So today I decided to break it down by author, and we're going to be covering Colleen Hoover books that I have read in this exact moment at this time, okay? There will be more in my repertoire later. I have a Goodreads page. I don't know if you follow people on there, but I have a Goodreads account and I rate my books. I put in books that I want to read and all that jazz. Mainly I get all my ideas from Book Talk, so if you aren't on Book Talk and you like books, try to get yourself on the Book Talk algorithm. It's great. But before we do that, why don't you subscribe? Okay? If you like books and beauty, if you like me, if you think I'm all right, you can handle staring at me for like 25 minutes once a week, then subscribe. Like the video, comment on the video, comment if you have books in particular that you want me to review, if you have authors, and if I've read them, I will. I have a hard time reading books because somebody told me to. So just like I've read a million Jodi Picoult books, I've read quite a few Caroline Kepnes's books, I've read Emily Henry books, I've read Alex, what's his name? Silent Patient author, Alex, something like that. And yeah, I'm also about to dive into a V.E. Schwab series, which is like a mystery, not a mystery, a mythical, magical kind of thing. So yeah, if you have a book that you want to hear me talk about or you've seen me reading and want to know more, then let's talk about it, okay? Comment it down below. I also am on Instagram and TikTok at CaitlinJolene_makeup over there. Instagram, I do weekly makeup Mondays, sometimes on Tuesdays, where we do a fun little chill makeup look with music in the background, just like have fun. On TikTok, I plan, and I'm saying it, so I have to hold myself to it, I plan on doing a series based off of, I need to find the name of the woman that I'm basing this like really cool idea off of. I'll put her in the description box. So because I can't think of her right now. So if you want to know who I'm getting this inspiration from, her TikTok account will be in the description box. But she essentially has a overabundance of eyeshadow palettes to the point where she hasn't even tried a lot of them. So she puts all of her palettes on a popsicle stick in a big bin. I mean, she has 522 last I checked. I don't have that many, but she picks one and then people comment on her videos to tell her like how to use the palette, whether it's like every shade you use has to be in alphabetical order, or like only use the 4 corners, or only use shades that start with a letter in your name, or things like that. I'm gonna be doing that over on my TikTok soon, I promise, so you might as well go over there, follow me, enjoy that content as well, because I feel like that's gonna be fun. It's gonna force me to use my palettes. I have a lot in my little storage that I don't always really touch. They just kind of sit in there, so to be forced to use them would be great. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the way that I plan on doing this today, mainly because I have 4 Colleen Hoover books that I've all read, and I have to ship them to my sister tomorrow. So I'm going to take the books that I've read, I'm going to give you the brief synopsis, and then I will give you, how about we do this? I'll do the brief synopsis of all 4, like my general rating on Goodreads, if what I rate it in the scale of what books I've read from Colleen Hoover, and what it is about to give you an idea. Then I will let you know when it is time to shut it off if you want no spoilers, and then we will discuss like more in-depth things about the books themselves. Because I don't want to give spoilers away, but I also want to make sure that I'm able to discuss more of the book, because I feel like you don't really watch a book review to just hear anything you can find online, you know? But let me get myself started on some makeup. I have my travel makeup bags here. Because I haven't unpacked them yet, which is not like me. They've just been sitting over there. So I figured I'll just pull from these and I'll just use products that I had packed with me for my travel makeup. Because that seems like we're double dipping a little bit, right? I also got this palette for Christmas. This is the Colourpop of Quartz. I figured since I'm wearing black and white, a cool toned palette would be fun to try. So that's what we're gonna do. I am going to start with, the first book I read by Colleen Hoover was Ugly Love. The reason this was the first book is because I bought it at Walmart for, I believe, $9. This little corner right here was damaged when I bought it, which I'm very particular about how I open my books, so I didn't love that. But I hadn't ordered any of her books off Amazon, but I happened to see this one on Walmart when I was grocery shopping, and I said, all right, I'll try her. I'll try her. I'd seen people talk about it on Book Talk, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. So it's not exactly love at first sight for Tate Collins when she meets the tormented and secretive Miles Archer. They wouldn't even go so far as to consider themselves friends. The only thing Tate and Miles have in common is a mutual physical attraction that can't be denied. Once their desires are out in the open, they realize they might have stumbled on the perfect no-strings arrangement. He isn't looking for love, and she doesn't have time for it, so that leaves just the sex. What they've got could be surprisingly satisfying as long as Tate can stick to the 2 rules Miles has for her. Never ask about the past, don't expect a future. They think they can handle it, but everything is different when real emotions start to change the equation. So, Tate is a nurse, I believe, going to school in San Francisco. I think I might have that location like slightly off. But she goes and she stays with her brother in San Francisco and meets this boy, Miles, who is, her brother's a pilot, and Miles works with her brother, okay? So they're like BFF, best friends. They live across the hall in this apartment building, and so they interact a lot, okay? Like the book says, they decide to create a steamy relationship situation where they have a mutual agreement of only sex, okay? And he really does say, never ask about the past and don't expect a future. And that is the expectation. And then that doesn't really work out, if you catch my drift, which isn't that how it always works? Like, I'm sorry. Eventually you probably will end up developing feelings, whether that causes you to freak out and leave, or whether, and like stop your arrangement, or whether that causes you to change your arrangement into something a little bit healthier. Irregardless, always seems to happen. So, this is the first book I read by Colleen Hoover. I thought it was phenomenal. Okay, I think what's really interesting about this book is that it is obviously a romantic book, but it also has like a little bit of the enemies to lovers kind of trope that you see a lot. I really enjoyed the writing, obviously, because I'm a big fan of her, but it also jumps back and forth with perspectives. And that is something that I very much enjoy in books, which is also something I enjoy out of an author like Jodi Picoult, who's my favorite author of all time. And we'll get into some of her books at a later date, because most of these right here, Jodi Picoult. All of these right here, Jodi Picoult, okay? Anyways, so the thing with the bouncing back and forth is it goes between a past relationship with Miles and the current situation with Tate. So it jumps between the two, which is really interesting. So you get the two perspectives, but they're not coexisting at the same time or the same timeline. So that's really cool. I enjoyed the writing style. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was great. I think, let me check my rating. Okay, Colleen Hoover, Ugly Love, I rated 5 stars. I didn't know that. I thought I rated it 4. Good for me. This book really got me into Colleen Hoover, and I feel like I'm glad I started with this one because I did really enjoy it, and it was a really good book. There are steamy scenes, which I really enjoyed. I've never really read a book with like super steamy scenes like that in it, which was actually kind of interesting to read. I really enjoyed the twist. I really enjoyed the love story, how everything turns out in the end. Like, it's just a really great book. I think if I were to rate it out of all the books I've read from her, it is number 2 on my list. So then I went on Amazon and I bought 2 more Colleen Hoover books. After reading that, I said, I need more. So I went on and purchased this next book and then the third book that I will talk about as well. And this is the infamous classic, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, okay? This is actually being worked into a movie with Justin Baldoni, who played Raphael on Jane the Virgin and is a Saint. He also directed the movie 5 Feet Apart. And Colleen Hoover is obviously helping him. So this is going to become a movie, okay? Gonna be exciting. So, the back of the book says, Lily hasn't always had it easy, but that's never stopped her from working hard for the life she wants. She's come a long way from the small town in Maine where she grew up. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. So when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named Ryle Kincaid, everything in Lily's life suddenly seems almost too good to be true. Ryle is assertive, stubborn, maybe even a little arrogant. He's also sensitive, brilliant, and has a total soft spot for Lily. But Ryle's complete aversion to relationships is disturbing. As questions about her new relationship overwhelm her, so do thoughts of Atlas Corrigan, her first love and a link to the past she left behind. He was her kindred spirit, her protector. When Atlas suddenly reappears, everything Lily has built with Ryle is threatened. With this bold and deeply personal novel, Colleen Hoover delivers a heart-wrenching story that breaks exciting new ground for her as a writer. It Ends With Us is an unforgettable tale of love that comes at the ultimate price. So, this book is a delight. So, Lily, like it says, moved to Boston, where she is starting a floral business. So she wants to own a flower shop. What is also super interesting is I believe the first chapter of the book, she meets Ryle, but in a completely unrelated circumstance. So that is super interesting because you kind of start with like some sort of intriguing story of like their connection like at first, and then you're like, oh, now we're jumping to like totally different time. So this book does just that. It jumps back and forth a lot as well. It's all Lily's perspective, but it is, I know I look crazy, I'm just doing my makeup. It is Lily in the past, like her diary entries or whatever, because she kept diaries throughout her childhood, and so she's like reading them and reliving all the things that went on in her childhood through these diary entries, which we get to read, and then you also get Lily in the modern day. So Lily starts a flower shop, and she buys a place, and it is like a disaster. Like, it needs to be completely gutted and renovated and everything. So this random girl like walks in and asks if she can work there, and Lily's like, sure, please help me. So they start working together, and it turns out that Ryle, who she met in the first chapter, is this girl's brother. So that's how they kind of have their connection there. Atlas is a boyfriend from when she was a young girl, and she meets him at a restaurant in Boston while on a date with Ryle, and it like really shakes her up because he was like her first love. There's a huge trigger warning with this book. It is very triggering if there's any sort of violence in your history, abuse of any kind. It is very personal to Colleen Hoover as well for those exact same reasons. So yeah, it's a very interesting book. You kind of get like it's like the classic love story, and then like this crazy twist of Atlas gets like thrown into the mix, and it causes a lot of tension between like her and her partner, obviously, and even though she's like trying to avoid him. And then there's like a super crazy twist at like 3/4 of the way through the book. So you get this like moderately crazy twist, and then at the very end you get like another crazy twist that a lot of people didn't see coming. I personally rated this book a 4 stars. I don't think I can give half stars on Goodreads, or I would have given half stars. I'm also very generous with my ratings. It is rare that I will read a book that I'm willing to give anything less than 3 stars to, because if it's that bad, I'm not going to read it. So I'm never going to give a book 1 or 2 stars because I just simply won't finish the book. The reason I gave it 4 stars is because it's so hyped that I think that I was expecting so much from it, and I feel like it wasn't that. I mean, maybe if I read it again, I will find like absolute pleasure and joy in it, because it was a really good book, but to me it just wasn't as special as Ugly Love or the next one I'm going to talk about. Like, honestly, I rate it 3rd out of all the books that I've read by her, which is crazy because it's some people's like favorite book of all time. And if I look on It Ends With Us on Goodreads, it also has 4 stars. Or no, I rated it 4 stars, but the average rating of the book from other people, Ugly Love is 4.27, and It Ends With Us is 4.44. So it is a very popular book. Lots of people love it. They think it is like absolutely truly delightful, and I don't disagree, but I think the actual hype of it all and like what everyone says is like, wow, this is the best book ever written, and like being that in love with it, I wasn't. So I didn't find the same like fascination and like absolute obsession with this book, but it was very good. It was hard to put down. I'm pretty sure I finished it in like less than a week, which is pretty quick for me because I only really have time to read when I'm laying in bed. So it was a great book, and I'm also super excited for the movie, mainly because Justin Baldoni is an actual saint, and I cannot wait to see what he does. Sorry, my friend just called me and I got incredibly distracted, and I'm just now getting back to this, so I don't remember where I left off, but a brief intermission to mention our podcast, Singles and Thriving. If you haven't listened, please do. I will have the links down below for Apple, Spotify, and Google, and it's so fun and super exciting, and it's so different than makeup stuff, so I just find it super fascinating. Anyways, let's get back into this. So I'm gonna end with It Ends With Us. I feel like I said enough about that, and I'll get more into some of like the spoily things later. I did my concealer and my powder, and now I'm going to start with my cream bronzer, obviously, while we discuss our next book. So the other book that I bought at the same time as It Ends With Us is Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. She's a thick boy. None of that made sense. She's a thick boy. It's fine. Regretting You by Colleen Hoover is my favorite book I've read by her. Okay, this is a 5-star book in my opinion. This book I could not put down. I would stay up too late reading it, and I would go freaking crazy. It would be like 12:30, and I'd be like, oh, whoops, I have to wake up in 6 hours, and I'm still reading this book because it's that good. It was amazing, okay? So while I blend this out, let's read the back. Morgan Grant and her 16-year-old daughter, Clara, would like nothing more than to be nothing alike. Morgan is determined to prevent her daughter from making the same mistakes she did by getting pregnant and married way too young. Morgan put her own dreams on hold. Clara doesn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps. Her predictable mother doesn't have a spontaneous bone in her body. With warring personalities and conflicting goals, Morgan and Clara find it increasingly difficult to coexist. The only person who can bring peace to the household is Chris, Morgan's husband, Clara's father, and the family anchor. But that peace is shattered when Chris is involved in a tragic and questionable accident. The heartbreaking and long-lasting consequences will reach far beyond just Morgan and Clara. While struggling to rebuild everything that crashed around them, Morgan finds comfort in the last person she expects to, and Clara turns to the one boy she's been forbidden to see. With each passing day, new secrets, resentment, and misunderstandings make mother and daughter fall further apart, so far apart it might be impossible for them to ever fall back together. So there's Morgan and Chris. They met in high school and they were high school sweethearts, madly in love, adoring each other and everything. They hang out very consistently with Chris's best friend Jonah and her sister, whose name I believe is Jenna? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it starts with a J though. Anyways, and they are dating. So it's Morgan and Chris, and then Chris's best friend Jonah and Morgan's sister Jenna are like double dating all the time. They go everywhere together, they hang out together, all of that jazz. Morgan and Jonah have very similar personalities, and Chris and Jenna have very similar personalities. Like the dynamic really works, you know, it's like the whole opposites attract thing, because Morgan and Chris are like in love, and then Jenna and Jonah are in love, and it's great. So then, as the description says, Chris gets into a car accident and dies. And so now Morgan and Clara are left together. However, Clara never really liked, I mean, she didn't dislike her mom, but like nothing really about her mom is super exciting to her. She thinks her mom's pretty lame. She thinks her mom is just like, she's been a stay-at-home mom her whole life because she got pregnant at 16, didn't go to college, just had the baby, and then just stayed home while Chris worked and went to college and all that. So she never had a job. She never, well, maybe she did as like a secretary or something, but never anything like full-time. And yeah, so Clara's not impressed by her mom, and once her dad passes away, she's like, screw this, I'm rebelling, obviously. And so it's, then Clara meets a boy, and this boy is somebody that her dad said she could never talk to, because they knew his father in high school or something. Or yeah, his father in high school. So it's now the situation where Clara is like, nope, I'm in love with this boy that my dad didn't like, but now my dad's gone, so I don't care. Like, I'm fighting with my mom every second of every day. We're barely getting along. We're not even getting along. I'm rebelling and making poor choices just to get back at my mother and all these things. So it's a super extreme book. However, now you have two love stories blossoming at the same time, and it is the multiple perspectives like I've been talking about. She loves to do this, which I really enjoy, is her writing style is the multiple perspectives. So you have Clara and you have Morgan. The end is beautiful. It's an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. It's so cute and sweet, and like you get like the adult love story that you've always wanted. You get the child, like high school sweetheart love story you've always wanted. It's like, it's just one of those like super feel good, happy, I love to read this book. And it is definitely number one on my list of Colleen Hoover books. So I have Regretting You, Ugly Love, and Then It Ends With Us. And wow, I would read that book all over again if I could. Definitely 5 stars. Definitely, probably one of my favorites of 2020 for sure. I loved it. And then the very final book that I have is the book November 9. So I actually just purchased this one, I believe, either Amazon or, if it was Target, it would have the sticker on it. So that, or was it Walmart? No, I don't think so. I think it was probably Amazon, let's be honest with ourselves. So November 9, as I put my blush on, I will read this to you. Fallon meets Ben, an aspiring novelist, the day before her scheduled cross-country move. Their untimely attraction leads them to spend Fallon's last day in LA together, and her eventful life becomes the creative inspiration Ben has always sought for his novel. Over time, and amidst the various relationships and tribulations of their own separate lives, they continue to meet on the same date every year, until one day Fallon becomes unsure if Ben has been telling her the truth or fabricating a perfect reality for the sake of the ultimate plot twist. Can Ben's relationship with Fallon, and simultaneously his novel, be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak? As it says, Fallon is a young girl who used to be an actress. Her father is a very well-known actor in Hollywood, and or in LA or whatever. So she is essentially the beginning of the book, the first day, November 9. The first November 9, she's sitting at lunch with her father. And Fallon was in a very bad accident, a fire accident that left like scars all over the left side of her body that made it impossible for her to continue her acting career. So she was a regular, she was like the star even on like a TV show, like a recurring role, you know, obviously. She was getting very well known. It was like Everything was working out for her. She was just really popping off, okay? Then she gets all these crazy burns and she gets dropped from her show. And mind you, this is like 2 years prior to the start of the book, so they do explain this, but essentially it was in her father's house, and her father left and didn't go and find her in the house. He like didn't remember that she was sleeping there, and so he kind of left her to burn, essentially, and she blames him for all of her scars and the ruining of her career. And ever since then, she's just been doing voice acting because she hasn't been able to get back into acting. Her confidence is shot. She is like so insecure about her scars and can barely even like function in everyday life without like trying to hide every part of her body. Shows no skin, all that. So then she's at lunch with her dad, and her dad's kind of like, he's kind of a shithead. And he's essentially like, oh, like, without saying it, he's like, oh, you're not pretty enough to be an actress anymore, because she's moving to New York the next day to go try and be on Broadway. She's like, you know what? If I can't be a TV show or a film actress, maybe I can do Broadway instead and like continue my dreams, and like I don't have to be in this like depressed, insecure situation anymore. I'm gonna have a fresh start. I'm gonna move across the country and we're gonna start in New York. So that's happening with her dad, and he's essentially telling her and making her feel like she's incapable of doing so because she is not pretty enough anymore because of her scars, which obviously upsets her because she blames her dad for her scars. Then Ben is in the booth in front of Fallon behind her dad, and he hears all this, and he gets up, walks over to her, sits in the booth and pretends to be her boyfriend, and like really like gives it to her dad about how he's like such an asshole and like moving to New York is gonna be great for her and all that. And then they end up spending the rest of that day together, and then she ends up leaving, flying to New York, and they agree to meet on November 9th for the next 5 years until she is in her 20s, where her mom says that she can actually like fall in love and mean it, essentially. And like she's too young to fall in love right now, so she can't. What she thinks anyways. So she moves, whatever. This book also jumps between perspectives a lot. So it's not only is it first November 9 as like a part, second, third, fourth, fifth, but you also get both Fallon and Ben perspectives. So you get both of the characters, which is interesting. So you get to see both sides of the love story and everything. I think it's a really beautiful book. It has a very aggressive twist at the end that you do not expect and really throws you for a loop. Oh, also, this is the Of Quartz palette, and I'm pretty sure the hand sizes are larger than they used to be. Also, the fact that they give you this deep blue is so interesting. Anyways, so yeah, it has a crazy twist at the end that like, oh, nobody could have seen that one coming. And I don't know, it's really beautiful how, you know, it shows like this relationship between two people and the distance, but also, you know, the way that you can connect with someone so quickly and feel like this chemistry that's just undeniable. I think I rated it like a 4 stars, but if I could have rated it 4.5, I would have. I think November 9 is a great book. I would put it last on all the books that I've read from her, but that's not because it's bad. It's just because the other 3 books are such good books. And Colleen Hoover is such a good writer that just because it's still a 4-star book, it's just not the best book I read from her in the last 6 months. I also got my sister into reading Colleen Hoover by giving her this book. I was reading it, actually finished it New Year's Eve, I believe. No, I finished it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I can't remember. One of the two. Christmas Eve? Christmas Eve. And then I handed it to my sister and I said, hey, like, if you're trying to get into reading, read this. And I handed it to her. She read it in a week because by the time I left on January 2nd, she had already given it back to me. So she liked it. Now I am shipping her the rest of my Colleen Hoover books, and then my mom is going to read November 9, so I can maybe report back with their feedback over on Instagram or something if you want to know what they think of the ratings that I have. While I am doing my eyeshadow though, I am going to give you my disclaimer now, okay? That was my spoiler-free ratings and reviews and descriptions of the books that I have read by Colleen Hoover. But now I'm going to get into a time where we are not going to be spoiler-free anymore. okay? We are not going to be spoiler free. So if you are here still, and I just gave you that warning, that means that you are and you haven't read the books, that means you're putting yourself up for a bad situation here, and you cannot blame me if you get spoiled, and therefore the books are ruined for you because I told you to leave. Anyways, here we go. Okay, so let's start with Ugly Love. I'm gonna try to rant like pretty quick about these books because yes, I did 4 books in one video, so this video is gonna be super long, but I'm just gonna try to go through some of the reasons like books were my favorites and why I rated them and ranked them the way that I did, which is why I need to talk about the spoilers. So, Ugly Love. That book is, it was a great book to start with because it was great and it made me so excited to read more books by her. Tate is a very interesting character. I feel like she's a little bit eccentric, but she's also like all of us, you know, because Miles is like this emotionally unavailable man, which don't we all understand that? So Miles is like this emotionally unavailable man. He's also her brother's best friend, and her brother doesn't know that they're having sex. So they're like doing it in secret. They're just like, oh, I'm gonna go study at Miles, and then like they're hooking up and she's coming back, but her brother thinks nothing of it because it's innocent. Miles is emotionally unavailable because of the twist, which I didn't see coming. I thought it was just like a bad breakup or whatever, but no. He was married or with a girl that he was like madly in love with, and they were like perfect pairs, and then they had a baby. And when they leave the hospital with their baby, they get into an aggressive car crash, like underwater, and he saves her and he can't get the baby out. So him and his wife make it out, and the baby doesn't, the baby dies, and she like resents him because he's like, she says like, you should have saved the baby, like you shouldn't have given a crap about me, like what the fuck, like why didn't you save the baby, this is so fucked up, whatever. So they end up getting divorced, and he essentially decides that he's never being with anybody ever again, and that is the end of his life, his romantic life. So him and Tate are falling for each other, and Tate is like, hey, like I am into you, I want to see you, I want to be with you kind of thing, like I don't know if I can keep doing this like non-committal stuff. And he freaks out because he's like, I told you from the get-go what this was going to be and you're not listening, like I can't let somebody in like that again, like I can't like, I can't love anyone, I can't have a family, I can't do all that, like this isn't going to work. And they get pissed. The other thing that happens is her brother catches them, okay? And if you have siblings, I don't, but I can only imagine, if you have an older brother and he catches you sleeping with his best friend, he's gonna kill his best friend. So they are like in this wicked big fight. They're so freaking mad at each other. He like beats the shit out of him and like kicks him out and makes him go back to his apartment. They don't talk anymore. It's like this super dramatic thing. But at the same time, him and Tate aren't even together anymore because now they're having like this fight about like, you need to get over it and like tell me what happened, and he won't, he doesn't want to be with her, whatever. At the end of the book though, so like that's the crazy twist, is finding out about the baby dying. At the end of the book though, they end up falling in love and like doing all this, you know, being together and happily ever after and all that. So I also really enjoyed the book because of the spicy scenes, and I think it was a good dip my toe into the life of Colleen Hoover without it being like it ends with us style, like triggering and things like that. It was just like I mean, infant death is like a big deal, and if you have trigger warning, if you have infant death in your life and that is a trigger, then no, you're not going to want to read that book. But I think the beauty of Colleen Hoover is she writes things that are triggering. She writes things that are hard to hear and to talk about, and things that people experience that they're kind of stigmatized to think that they can't really discuss any further, which isn't great. Sorry, I just checked the time. Speaking of triggering things though, let's get into It Ends With Us. So, the big twist in the book, okay, there's multiple here. So, Atlas was technically a homeless boy who lived in the abandoned house behind Lily's house, and so she would give him food, let him come over after school and like shower and like eat and have electricity. They watched Ellen together, so that's like their big thing, is them like loving Ellen and all that. They're in love, they love each other, they're like having sex and all that. Her dad abuses her mom throughout the entirety of her like journal entries. And she hates it. It makes her like so upset, but like her mom is just like taking it, and she's so mad that her mom takes it. And she's like, why aren't you leaving? This is so messed up. And then her dad catches Atlas in her room, and he beats the absolute living shit out of him. And Atlas ends up leaving to go live with his uncle and join the military, I believe, and leaves Lily behind, and their goal was to move to Boston together. So Lily jumped forward, she moved to Boston, she has her little flower shop, her boyfriend Ryle is amazing, blah blah blah. Okay, they meet Atlas, and Ryle gets like real pissed about it. Super insecure man, like, who is this boy, get him out of here, I don't want you talking to him, whatever. Then Ryle ends up hitting Lily over a casserole dish. They're like drunk at her apartment, and they have dinner, and she drops a casserole dish, and he ends up smacking her because she's laughing, and he's like, it's not funny, because he like cut his hand or something, and he's a surgeon, so his hand's being cut means like he can't do his job. So he like turns around and like backhands her or something, and she's like really upset. And she's like, oh fuck, like what am I doing? So then he's like, oh my gosh, I promise it's not like me. His sister is like, no, like it's okay. Like he has a lot of trauma because he's the reason our third sibling, aka their other brother, is like dead. So he like has a lot of, like he died from some crazy accident, and Ryle's to blame, I guess, in his mind or something. So they're like, it's fine, like he's not gonna do it again. So then like later on in the book, he pushes her down the stairs in like the stairwell of their like building. And she's like, I can't be with you, I don't want to be with you. And then she finds out she's pregnant. So they break up, and then she's like, oh no, I'm pregnant, now what? So she decides she doesn't want to be with him. He moves out into a different apartment. She stays in the one that they had together. Or better yet, I think they even get married. Yeah, they get married. And then he hits her again or something. I think he technically actually rapes her. Like relational, or like a relationship rape, or whatever that's called. I don't remember the terminology, but he essentially rapes her, which is also very abusive. But he's never emotionally abusive, he's just physically abusive. I do want to specify, because like they do portray him as like this perfect human, and the reason for that is Lily begins to understand why her mom stayed in the relationship with her dad, because it's like, oh, I have kids, and like also at first it's like, oh, he won't hit me again. Oh, at least he didn't hospitalize me. Oh, at least he didn't this. Like coming up with all the excuses. But she ends up being pregnant, she has the baby, and he's like trying to win her back, he's like trying to beg for her, and she's like, no. And then she's like, you know what, I'll decide after I have the baby, we can talk about it, whatever. So she has the baby, and the second they're in the room together, Ryle, Lily, and the baby, she looks at Ryle and she goes, I want a divorce. And it's like this crazy twist, because you expected them to like get back together and everything to be good, and he's perfect, and like you're rooting for him, but you're also rooting for Atlas at the same time. And you don't know who to believe, and you don't know who you want to be the winner in this situation, because Ryle was so sweet, but now he's not. And so she asked for a divorce, and he's like, no, and she's like, nope, like that's it. He walks out of the room, I believe, and she looks at the baby and she says, it ends with us, referring to the cycle of abuse, because she's a product of abuse. She watches her mother get abused, and all of that. So that's a really beautiful lesson. The story is great. I honestly think the reason I didn't like it so much is I think it's like too personal for me, being that I have experienced domestic violence and been pregnant and like all of that in a domestic violence relationship. So I think it was just too triggering for me personally, and I rooted for Atlas the whole book. And at the very end, in the last chapter, her and Ryle have like this beautiful, perfect co-parenting situation. She drops off the baby, it's like a year later, but she runs into Atlas on the street in Boston, because Atlas owns the restaurant that she saw him at. He was waiting tables because he likes to. So he owns his restaurant, which was his dream. She owns her flower shop, which was her dream. They're like living their dream in Boston, but they haven't connected, you know? So then they run into each other on the street, and she's like, Atlas, oh, hi, this is my daughter, huh? And she like walks away and gives the daughter to Ryle, and then she turns around and she runs, and she starts like screaming Atlas's name. She goes and she gets her man, and they fall in love, and they kiss, and that's the end of the book, and it's amazing. And it's really cute. So I was really excited that Ryle was not the winner, because of the fact that he's abusive. But like, it's hard. I think the point of the book and the reason why people are so drawn to it is because like it gives you insight into that type of relationship and how it is so difficult to leave once you're there, because I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions for people who are in domestic violence relationships, is everyone's just like, well, why didn't you leave? Well, why didn't you leave? Well, why didn't you leave? And it's very difficult for people to understand why you don't leave. So this book really shows you, like, it helps you empathize with the victims of abuse and understand why it's hard for them to leave their abusers, especially when it comes to financial security, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to children, when it comes to just like all the good, like, no, but like he's so good every other second. It's just this one time he did something bad, or like it's only this 2 times, and if I don't do this again, then he won't do it again, because like he got mad at me because I laughed about the cut on his hand, and that obviously stressed him out because he's a surgeon. So if I don't laugh at a cut on his hand again, he's not going to hurt me again. Oh, whoops, he pushed me down the stairs. If I didn't talk to Atlas against his, like, behind his back or something, whatever it was, and like have a slight texting communication with him, he wouldn't have pushed me down the stairs. Like, these are things that it's like you start to empathize and understand why those things happen for victims of abuse, which I think is really beautiful. But I feel like it was a little predictable. The love story wasn't my favorite. I mean, I was glad she was with Atlas, but I think that the message is why it should be a popular book, and the lessons people can learn from it. But when it comes to the books that she's written as a whole and like the romance aspect, I am more drawn to Ugly Love and Regretting You over It Ends With Us. It is still an amazing book. I would rate it 4.5 stars if I could, but I had to rate it 4. But it's just not 5 for me, because like, yeah, it was good, but it wasn't I could put it down. I wasn't like, I can't do it, I have to go to the next chapter and keep reading. Like, I could put it down and walk away and continue my everyday. Okay. I have my mascara on, and now I can do my eyebrows while I talk about the next book, which is Regretting You. My favorite book of Colleen Hoover's thus far. She is amazing. So, one of the big twists happens very early on in this book, and I would like to point out that Colleen Hoover's twists, they don't happen at the end. They happen like 3/4 of the way through a book, which I find very interesting. I feel like she gives a lot of time in her books to resolve the story after you hear the twist. What is amazing about that is that it gives you so much time to have this like crazy experience. And with Regretting You, it hooks you right from the beginning, like the second chapter. So the first couple chapters are them in high school and whatever, and then she finds out she's pregnant, they get married, they jump like 16 years in the future. The twist though is that Chris, Morgan's husband, and her sister Jenna both die in the car accident because Chris is driving her sister's car. Now, neither of them, it was Chris's birthday also, I think. So neither of them should have been in the car, or the day after his birthday or something. Neither of them should have been in the car together because they should have both been working in separate places. So the second they find that out, it's crazy. But her sister Jenna got pregnant with Jonah's baby on like a one-night stand after Jonah's dad's funeral. So they have a baby together, and they live in the same town as Morgan and Chris. Morgan and Chris are married. So now Jonah and Morgan are like stuck trying to figure out this like crazy awful thing that they just learned about their significant others who are now dead and can't like explain themselves. So that part is insane to me. Okay, so that's like early on. So they find out that they were having an affair this whole time, and they don't know how many years it's been going on, but it's been years. Like, they've been in love forever. But Chris was married to Morgan because of the baby, and Jonah was married to Jenna, or was going to get married to Jenna because of the baby as well. Okay, so they end up professing their love for each other because they've loved each other since they were in high school. And Morgan and Jonah have like a flashback of them talking about how they're in love with each other, but Morgan then looks at him and she's like, I'm pregnant, and it like completely destroys them, and Jonah actually leaves and disappears and leaves town. So it's only been like a couple months or a year since she's even had Jonah back in her life, like 16 years later. So they fall in love, and the reason her daughter gets so mad is because she catches them kissing, and she thinks that like they were cheating on her aunt and her dad like the whole time, and she also feels guilty because she was texting her aunt when they crashed, so she thinks that her aunt, like she's the reason her aunt's dead, and then she learns that her aunt wasn't driving, so like it wasn't her fault, it was her dad. But she ends up finding solace in a boy who her dad, like I said, doesn't want her to date, but she thinks he's super cute and has always had like a little crush on him. And they end up hanging out, they're enjoying each other's company, whatever. They end up like dating behind her mother's back, because her mother doesn't want her to because of her dad, but like she's mad at her mom anyways and is like, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want. They end up having sex, so she loses her virginity to him, but when she's pissed at her mom, she like makes him come over and climb through the window, and they end up having sex because she wants her mom to be upset about it. And then her mom catches them in the morning, like freaks out, and the boy freaks out because he's like, you only did this so you could like get back to your mom, like I did this because I loved you kind of thing. So it's like this big thing. They end up like reconciling, and they do a movie project because they both want to go to like film school or directorial things and things like that. Jonah's also their teacher in high school, and he convinced both of these kids to work together even though they aren't supposed to be together. And like his best friend Clara's dad is like, they can't. He's like, no, you guys need to do this together because it's gonna work out, okay? The most beautiful, romantic, stunning twist at the end. There's like this joke between, I think, what is his name? I don't remember. Essentially the boyfriend and his grandfather, who is like about to die. And he takes care of him. It's like, hey, like, have you told the girl this story? And he's like, Grandpa, shut up. So he like keeps telling the grandpa, like, no, stop. Like, you can't tell her that story, Grandpa, like, shut up. And so there's like this big joke throughout the thing that she's like, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna find out what your grandpa wants to tell me. And he's like, no. So at the end of the book, okay, they're showing everyone the movie that they came up with. And everyone's like, it's like satirical and everything. And then at the end, he puts in another movie, and there is a clip from his grandpa recording him, and he's watching a play that Clara is like the star in, and he's like mouth dropped, like staring at her, and his grandpa says something about like essentially making fun of him for being like so into this girl on the stage, and he's like, I'm gonna marry that girl someday. And he tells his grandpa that. They had never spoken at this point. Okay, Clara was like a freshman, so it's like a year down the road. And then he has like all these recordings because they were working on their movie. So like if she's like off in the distance doing something, he like records himself like talking about how much he loves her, if he's gonna ask her to be his girlfriend, and like I want her to go. It's like essentially his big long prom proposal. And then at the end, obviously it's like, do you want to go to prom with me? And then they agree, and it's so cute. Oh my god, it was absolutely adorable. And I think the reason that I like this book the most is, one, the twists were brutal, but I was also rooting for Jonah and Morgan the whole time, and I was so mad at Clara for being like so rebellious, but I also don't understand the grief. So I'm like, she's being irrational, and then I'm like, but it's grief, and like she's confused because her mom refuses to tell her like that her sister, aka her aunt, and her dad were having a affair because she doesn't want her to have bad opinions of her family members who can't defend themselves, and like all this. So she's like taking on all of the abuse essentially from her daughter because she like wants to protect her love for her family. And it's like something I just empathize with, and I'm like, I would totally do the same thing. And it's just it's so beautiful. And like the Jonah and Morgan relationship is like so tense, and like you can just feel the sexual tension because they can't do anything, but they want to, and they know it's wrong, but they don't want it to be wrong. And then like the girl is living out her like high school fantasy, which like we all have, and if you didn't live one, you want this one to work, okay? And it does, and it's beautiful, and it's I loved it. Okay, so that was definitely my favorite book. And then November 9, okay, the twist in November 9 was fucking crazy. Okay, it's still lower than all the other books, but the twist was definitely the craziest. Okay, Ben set fire to Fallon's dad's house, and that's why she has the scars. He almost killed her in a fire, and he didn't even know her. He only knew the dad because his dad was sleeping with Ben's mom a long time ago, but Ben's mom committed suicide because she had some sort of cancer. And so instead of putting her children through the medical bill, she shot herself in the head. And Ben found her in their home. So he's like super traumatized and in like this weird mental state. He had been like going like down because he also felt so much guilt because he set fire to this guy's house and almost killed the daughter because he was mad at him for sleeping with his mom, and he thought that like she killed herself because this guy broke up with her, and not like she didn't love her kids enough to stay alive, but she loved this guy enough to die for him. And it's like, so he set fire to the house, and then she caught a fire, and then he saw them, and like he went to that diner on purpose to see what the daughter looked like, but he was also like mesmerized by her beauty. So he like jumps in and he's like, hey, like I'm her boyfriend or whatever. And they don't find this out until the 4th November, so you get like a couple beautiful cute love stories in there too, and it's just so cute. Oh, it was so good. But at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with the book. I think it's so cute and so adorable, and they do such a good like job of like him trying to help her through insecurities and like making her feel like a better person and the person she is, but making her realize it. And it's super cute. I just think that out of all the books, the love story wasn't as much of what I was into. I mean, honestly, if I found out if a guy set fire to my house and caused my whole life to go flip upside down because he absolutely fucked me over and ruined my career, I don't think I'd take him back. And she does take him back because they love each other. It's like, it sounds fucking toxic. He technically stalked you to meet you the first day. That's toxic behavior, okay? But granted, all the behavior in all these books is toxic, so what are you gonna do? We all love it. It's just, what toxicity do you like more? Do you like abuse? Do you like emotional abuse? Do you like cheating? Do you like infant death? Like it's all toxic and emotional unavailability due to trauma that you won't deal with. Or do you like somebody stalking you and almost killing you on accident? Like, I don't know. Pick your poison. But I can't wait to read more Colleen Hoover books. I can't wait to continue this journey of Colleen Hoover, and I also can't wait to continue this books and beauty journey. I know this was a long video, I'm so sorry, but I had to cram all 4 books because I have to ship them out and I won't be able to do this again in a little while. So I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment. If you've read any of these books and you have similar opinions to me, if you have a particular favorite, if you think that I'm wrong in my opinions, if there's any other Colleen Hoover books you think I should definitely read. Verity is on my list. I also think Reminders of Him is on my list. There might be a few more, but those are the ones for now. I also have a ton of books that I got for Christmas, so I'll be reading those as well, and I have way more books to talk about on books and beauty in the future. So if you enjoy, please subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram and TikTok so you can see all the things I talked about at the beginning. Makeup Mondays, the eyeshadow palette challenge, whatever. Check out the podcast that I mentioned in like the middle of the video because it's awesome and I have a lot of fun doing it with my best friends. So you should go listen to all the episodes and follow it and rate it on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and follow us on Spotify and all the things. Anyways, I hope you had a fantastic time. I hope you enjoyed this makeup look. Sorry I didn't describe it. If you want me to change anything about this in the future, where I like tell you what makeup products I'm doing, do less books obviously so it can be more in depth, maybe like half the time, I get it. So yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I can't wait to see you next Friday at 4 p.m. on this channel where we do something else that's fun. Bye, beautifuls.